I'm going to let him fill you in on the details because they're very, very interesting. And without further ado, I'm going to call him, a.k.a. Captain John Lonergran.
I'm sure. It's very wonderful. We'll be able to get on. You don't speak Irish? Well, I'll be forced to address you then in the language of the landlords of Ireland, the English. You all do speak English. My name is John Lonergran. Sean Lonergran, we would say back at Tipperary where I was born. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm welcoming you in Irish and thanking you for your kind invitation to let me address this group. If you cannot hear me at any point, please signal. I'll try and address the crowd. Even though it's not really my native language, if you can't understand my English, you can always ask for clarification. I was born in a lovely little village called Carrick-on-Suir, which means the rock of the Suir River, in the southern part of Ireland. If you look at this as the Irish, as the island is one, an aborted rebellion. He was captured, he was hanged, beheaded, cut in 4 pieces, and scattered. Because when you rose up against McKone, they wanted to make sure it didn't happen again, right? They thoroughly disposed of people that they considered traitors. Well, there were these colonies of Irish all over, including in the southern United States, because there were ships going between the southern United States and England, carrying what to England? But you know, that's what they carried cotton to England at the mills. And these mill towns had a lot of Irish, and they didn't want to come back empty, so they could either go coal or Irish. It was easier to get the Irish on board, and the coal might have had less trouble, but they would bring the Irish down south. And they were Great Britain. Well, Great Britain, playing the perfidious Albion, was quite happy to see the United States break up into 2 less powerful countries. Because the United States was always kind of eyeing Canada, British North America at the time. So in 1861, the actual hostilities broke out. Vermont was woefully prepared for war. There was a few understrength, badly equipped, and poorly led militia companies that were cobbled together into the 1st Regiment of Vermont. The militia was called up by the President under his constitutional authority. I had just formed my company, and I had hopes that we would go with the 1st Regiment, but they took 10 other companies. And they went off to war for the 3 months. But it was very clear that these were not enough resources. Lincoln immediately called up additional resources of volunteers as opposed to militia who were already signed on. And the 2nd Vermont Regiment was formed in Burlington. The 1st it must have been at Rutland. And I was standing tall, and I had my Irishmen to a man. They were all good Irish lads from around Burlington. And I kept saying, take us, we're ready to fight for the Union. They raised Company A and B and C and all down, just 10 companies to a regiment, and getting a little nervous there. But when they got down to the very last company, Company K of the 2nd Vermont, they said, okay, Lonergran, bring your boys here, it's going to be Company K. And we were so proud, we were so delighted. They had us all arranged for muster there at the fairgrounds in Burlington. We'll build a camp here, which I understand there's somebody that might know something about Camp Holbrook that might say a few words later on in the presentation here, if there's a volunteer. But they would ship these companies in, either by company or by regiment, they would be formed, and they were cranking them through it just about this time of year, 150 years ago, in the fall of 1862. They ran five regiments of 9 months, then 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, residents, Vermont residents, all came through here, one right after the other, were formed up, given the one-size-fits-all uniform, outfitted with all the straps, equipment, and weapons such as this man carries. You have a chance to look at it in more detail here, but stand easy in the front. I'll bring you up for the evening. Was farthest away from the rendezvous point. And my company, the Irish company, was accidents of war. Was always required to camp about 100 yards away from everybody else because they claimed they didn't get any sleep. The Irish company was everyone there. So we're at the very end of this defensive line. As the troops formed up, we were the ones that got there last. An hour after we cleared the Wolf Run Shoals ford, the rebel cavalry commander, Jeb Stuart, had been trying to get around the Union lines because the Union and Confederate forces were moving north, and he couldn't get across through the lines, so he kept working farther south. He came across the Wolf Run Shoals with 5,000 men about an hour after the march went into there. So it was a close call. But even the company commanders didn't know what the grand strategy was. We knew we had broken camp, we knew we were abandoning the outer defenses of Washington, but we weren't real clear why. We'd gotten rumors that the Army of Potomac was trying to kill us. We started off on a heavy marching order, and now you would rethink what you were carrying as you went along. I'll just set that in the picture.
Thank you, Captain. When the troops were told to advance north, they didn't know particularly where they were going. They thought perhaps they were going back to Vermont. And so they realized that there might be things that they could use. So they might have in the summer they would have dressed like this. But they would have had vests, they would have had glass on, just the top on the regulation stipulated that you had to have either the top button or all button. Now, they were doing about 20 miles or more a day. They were also going out range dining. There was no weather for it. You just got up and went. If it was raining, you walked and marched in the mud. If it was hot and dusty, you went through the dust. An Enfield musket weighs 9.5 pounds. Except for when they were in camp and these were stacked, they would have had this on them on the march in one of these positions where they would have been carrying it like so. Maybe they would have trailed arms just to give themselves a break. But they always had that in their possession on the person. I'm going to set this down just for a minute to show you some of the other accoutrements they would have carried. They would have had their water, such as the water quality of the water was that they would have gotten. They didn't have a real good concept of sanitation back in the 19th century before germ theory, so they would have gotten filled these out of streams or anything like that or ponds, and it would have been just as good or bad as they could have gotten. But they would have carried a vessel like this full of water. This is a spherical canteen, very typical of what they would have carried. They would have carried their mess kit with them. Got a cup on the outside, which is just more or less an advertisement, kind of a known. It's when you're on the march, you don't put this on the outside because when you're in formation, you feel like this, and when you're switching things back and forth, your file mate is banging his knuckles on your cup. And after a couple of times of doing that, he will take and cut the strap off your sack, and then you'll lose your cup and your strap. So these are some of the things they would have carried with them. They would have carried their plate to cook with. This is called a boiler. They would have also drank coffee out of that. They would have made soup, eaten out of that. Anything they would have wanted. They probably would have had some candles in here in addition to their utensils. utensils and things. Tin utensils. Oh, yeah. They would have rations. There's some rice in this bag that I had left over from the recent encounter. They would have been issued 3 days rations, and they would have carried their own rations. They would have carried their what they call the housework, which is their sewing kit, in case they popped a button and broke a seam, or had a patch, or fixed a pocket, or something that would have done there. So they had a lot of gear and they would have carried. Carried matches. With all kinds of odds and ends, they would have carried them in everywhere. That in itself is heavy enough. But the thing that would have been really heavy would have been the cartridge. It would have been issued 40 rounds. And it would have looked something like this. In the end here, it would have had a lead conical bullets, any ball, and then it would have had a standard issue with 60 grams of gunpowder. And they would have had 40 of these. Everybody knows how these work, right? Tear them off with the teeth, load them, ram. They would have carried all that, so that would have made the box that much more heavier. The box itself has tins in it to hold the plus the weight of the leather. They would have been taking that on a 20-mile march in 100-degree heat. They would have had the caps here, because this Enfield musket, rifle musket, is a percussion weapon. The cap would go on here on the cone. After it was loaded, the cap would go on the cone, and then when it's fired, the hand would drop down on the cap to create the spark to ignite the gunpowder in the chamber.
Private, I want to cut you short, there's people being very patient, and I want to take a few more minutes and show them the bayonet, and tell them how many rounds a minute you can get off.
Okay, yeah. The standard for the rifle musket was 3 rounds per minute, and they didn't want troops to shoot any more than 3 rounds a minute because they thought if they did, they were losing accuracy. This is an example of the rifle Enfield musket, accurate up to about 800 yards.
So how many yards?
800. Now the bayonet, in addition to that, this is actually, that's what the captain was talking about when he talked about how they had some company that fixed bayonets and helped their French and Irish Brigade decide that they were going to get on the train and go in the army. That would have
Fairly persuasive.
gone on the end of the musket and put the reach of it up like that. So, but that gives you an idea of the amount of weight that they carried. And as they went, both north and south, as the men got used to the weight of the items that they carried every day, they naturally decided after fashion that there were things they didn't need to carry. So you would see the roadside littered with knickknacks, spare blankets. The other thing they would have been issued, which would have been great for the warm weather, but wouldn't have been much used in summer, would have been a greatcoat. The sky blue greatcoats that were, they weighed about 40 pounds. So you wouldn't, and plus that, and you've got 4 layers of clothes on now, so you don't quite need the greatcoat in July. But, hopefully that'll give you an idea of what the life of the common soldier was like, and some of the hardships they had to live in.
Talk about how comfortable your shoes were.
Or not. That lady is intimately aware of my complaint about the shoes, so she knows that these are peg brogans, and they are made on straight lath, and much like the uniforms that the men wore, they were kind of a one size fits most, and get one that's close enough and wear it. And I know that certain people, higher ranking people, didn't bother with military equipment. They wore their own shoes, but that was not an option for the private. But yeah, these were you get them caked with mud, leather on the bottom, steel heel plate for traction. You get them caked with mud on the bottom, and you probably would weigh 20 pounds each by the time you got to where you're going.
The next day, there was some Union cannon that had been captured. So we went charging down in the twilight. Corps Commander Hancock had told our company, our regiment commander, to recover those cannon if we could. My boys went down with the standard Irish war cry, Walla Walla, clear the way. And we went down there, laid hands on the cannon, we were taking some shots from the farmhouse. I kicked down the door and ordered the rebels out. Took 82 prisoners with my 50 men, and we marched them back up to the amazement of all the veterans who were up there on that hillside of Cemetery Ridge, watching us charge up into no man's land. And we came back with the cannon retrieved and the prisoners, and they said, "Where are you fellas from?" I said, "Well, we're Green Mountain boys." He said, "Well, we knew you were green because nobody else would have gone down." Lose a man. The next day was miserable. There had been an assault on the hill. There were dead Georgians all over. We were hunkered down behind a low stone wall. We were being bombarded by the rebel cannon, the greatest cannonade that had ever taken place in North America. My first lieutenant was a schoolteacher from Brattleboro named John Simmons, a good friend. We moved slightly forward to the battle line, and we built some breastworks and fence rails. But the boys kept looking up to see what was going on, and he said, "Boys, keep your heads down or you'll be killed for sure." And at that point, a shell exploded, and a fragment went through his hat. He lingered for 10 days, but he died. When the cannonade stopped, we knew what was coming next. And we looked out, and there were 15,000 rebels formed up, coming out of the woods on Seminary Ridge. They had a long ways to go, and it was going to be a tough road, but it was a splendid sight. And the Irish looked at each other and said, "Now that's how you rebel. You got guns, you got flags, you got organization, and you put the men in there, and they're gonna die, do or die, Unfortunately, we're here to make sure they die." So, as they came up, there were 3 Vermont regiments that were on the field, 2 regiments had been left behind to guard the wagon trains. Rose up and gave them a volley. The rebels began to concentrate up to our left. And as some of the veterans began to die off back in the 1880s, 1890s, a lot of them discovered that they had been more heroic than anybody knew. I think Lonergan, he certainly deserved a medal. And I don't think he applied for one until he found out that George Grenville Benedict, who was in the 12th Vermont, he was the editor of Burlington Free Press and postmaster. He was there as an aide to Standard, and he was given the Medal of Honor for having carried messages on the battlefield.